Shemai Elite Dangerous Chums, and welcome to the final episode of Laser Mining for Merits. And today we're going to be looking at the flawed genius that is the Type 9. So I'm going to take you through the outfitting, the build, and then we're going to look at a little bit of laser mining, and then we're going to talk about how many merits you can hope to achieve and comparing it to other vessels. So let's look at the outfitting right ahead. So the limitation is that you only have 3 2D laser miner slots, and these are obviously the best that you can use for laser mining. But what we've done is augmented those with 2 1D Torville mining lasers. These are an unlock, so you don't need them for this build, but they will enhance your laser mining and will make it a little bit better. So I do recommend you unlock them at some point when you can. Check out my video for that, which is in the description. So look, utility mounts. You've got 2 heat sinks. Now this aircraft does make a lot of heat, so you will need some heatsink launchers. So I've got those, but you could sacrifice one of those and put a shield booster in there as well. Point defenses, you've got 2 at the bottom, which will just protect you from cargo hatch limpets from any pirates that try and interdict you, but you should be able to beat interdictions with this build. But if you're not great at interdictions, then you will definitely, you need them anywhere basically. They'll protect you. I wouldn't recommend mining in a Haz Res as well. It goes without saying, because you don't have any defensive weapons on this ship at all, and it's pretty lightweight, but it is decent just for interdictions, I think, and for escaping. So looking at the lightweight alloys, we've got G5 deep plating on that. Power plant, now you could do, the optimum honestly is probably a 6A armoured unit with thermal, but this overcharge unit does need thermal just because it builds up heat. But bear in mind, it will not protect you no matter what unit you put in from the heat from the mining lasers. The most important thing on this build, there's 2 aspects. So first off, thrusters, you want the G5 dirty drive with drag drives, which will make it a hell of a lot easier to maneuver, but you're doing a lot of slow speed in the asteroid field, so it could be G3, it could be G2, dependent on what you can afford. Excuse me. Power distributor, the second most important aspect for engineering purposes, and perhaps the most important. You want, ideally you would use the weapon focused G5 with super conduits, but I've used charged enhanced with super conduits because this is the only T9 I have, and also there is an argument that it'll give you more boost for boosting away from pirates if you do get interdicted. So this is probably the safer bet from a more rounded build, but I would use, if I could do it again, honestly I would use the weapon just for, if this was just a dedicated laser miner. As I said, I've only got 1 T9, so that's why I don't have that. Life support and sensors need to be D-rated. There's an argument you could have long-range A-rated sensors to protect against pirates, but honestly I don't really need it. Just boost away and run away. And I've got lightweight on both, ideally on both of those, is engineering what you want. Okay, so importantly on the T9 you have a big cargo capacity. So we've got a 2.8 rated, so 2 times 256 is 512. We have an additional 128 to give us 640 total, which gives us a couple of hours out there in the mining, and even longer if you're unengineered as well. So we're going to buddy that up with some as many collector limpets as we can have. So the rule of thumb is you have 3 to 3.5 collector limpets for every 2D mining lasers. So as I said, we've got 3 2Ds, and those 2 1s count as an additional 2D. So let's call it 4 2Ds. So 4, or just under 4. 4 times 3 is 12, so we want 12 total collector limpets. We're just under with this build because we've got, these gives us 3, ridiculously, the collector limpets, and these 2 3Ds gives us an additional 4 from those 2, to give us 7 total there. And then we also have the mining multi-limpets to give us an additional 4, so that's 11 total, just under the 12, which is the ideal. But bear in mind this mining multi-limpet collector will give us a prospector limpet. Do not use that because it's C rated and will give you less yield in the for each asteroid compared to the A rated unit here, which will give us the best metal content when we're mining. So it's a 3A because it gives us 2 active limpets, which I'd say is the minimum for any laser miner. Looking at the refinery, and this is perhaps a sacrifice, but really it isn't. You get 6 bins, which is ideal, but you do need to restrict the amount of what you're collecting out there. So you want to collect silver and above, so anything 50 grand and above really. So if you have Gallite, make sure your collectors are not collecting that, otherwise you'll fill the bins up with useless gubbins. Detailed surface scanner, you need that. You don't need to engineer it at all, just to scan the rings. So there's going to be 2 rings. You need to make sure you scan both of them when you're in the asteroid field. So that is the build. Next, onwards to the mining. The real treat to this ship is the internals. Look at that 1D laser going around and around that Torval laser. Very nice, but more importantly, industrial look to the internals. How big it is, how big the view from the bridge is, and the visibility is... There's no better visibility if we're getting really up close to your rocks, and you will need to get up close with those asteroids because of the positioning of the lasers. But look how close you can get. You can see exactly where the rock is, so you don't bump it. So that is good, and so is just the overall industrial feel to it. That's one positive, a big positive for VR users for sure. But let's have a look at those external lasers now. Those top 2 lasers are quite far apart. Now this is problematic for the limpets because the particles are coming off the top left laser beam. So that's meaning that they're flying off a bit further up than you would want. So they're not flying to the bottom of your ship towards the cargo hold, unfortunately. As you can see from the crazy limpet behaviour there. So I probably need to tilt a little bit more downwards than you would normally in a vessel, but I don't think I got it right on that outside view anyway. So let's have a look at a bit better example here as we move in towards this rock. So look at the heat rising nicely. We've got to 50%, and we need to come off because it's overheated. It's not really the distributor so much, although notice it does drain the distributor pretty quickly as well, but it's normally done in a 2 job, so you need to take a pause between blasts. There's the asteroid depleted, nice. Looking out, send out our prospector limpets before the next load. You can do this at pace as well, so you don't just need to be stationary. Now remember the T10 had problems where the prospector limpets would smash against it, but this doesn't have the same kind of problem. It's not completely 100% gone, it does happen from time to time, but not nearly as bad as a T10. So we're getting the prospector in a nice rock here. Platinum 44%. Does it get much better than that? Not much really, unless you're in a Haz Res. Look at the top left laser now to see those particles coming off, and the limpets are having to burn off to the left there. So it's very tricky to try and get it going southwards towards your base. So that's a little bit of a niggle with the Type 9, unfortunately. But it's not something that I noticed and got excited about, though. It wasn't a big frustration, to be honest. You just get into the kind of sedate pace, and you also lose a few more limpets than you would expect on just about any other vessel because of that. But part of that is, of course, pilot error of not quite getting the positioning right. Perfect there. So let's go for some more prospecting and see if we can go at speed. There we go. So what I also tended to do as well is raise the cargo scoop, because with the other ships, the other large vessels like the cutter, you can drive with the cargo scoop down and it'll get 110, 120 meters per second. Oh, notice a prospector limpet going out there at 83 meters per second. Now that would have been a problem for the T10, it would have been swatted against the side. So that's another factor. You can't be lazy and leave your cargo scoop open all the time because of this very, very slow speed, which is restricted to about 50 meters per second when the cargo scoop's down. Well, looking at the merits, you can see how many I started off with there. So if you look at the bottom right hand side, you'll see how many merits I've made, and of course the price of the sale will come up there as well. Gold 1,700, so not a great deal. Osmium's big ticket, 181k. Sale price means we get 8,732 merits out of it. The big one's going to be platinum, not palladium. So platinum, 450 units of that for 219k makes us a whopping 73,288. And this was over 2 hours. So looking at the T9 over 2 hours, it was about 87,288 merits I made off this particular run, which was not out of the ordinary. So if we look at it and take it as an hourly rate, it was somewhere generally between 38,000 and 42,000 merits per hour, which is well, very competitive. And you're comparing that to the cutter has got to be the other big cargo capacity laser miner, and I suppose it's the main competitor from that perspective. Now the cutter would be making something like 40 to 46,000 merits, so it's quite a good deal more than the T9, but not massively. Now there was a sporadic 55,000 merits that I made out of it. Now if we take that one as being the highest and the 42,000 as being the highest for the T9, that makes the T9 about 75% as good, as efficient as the cutter. However, that cutter had 4 2D mining lasers compared to the 3 2Ds and the 2 1D Torvils, which is equivalent to 4 2Ds on the T9. So it was probably a bit closer than it should have been. So what I mean is, if we put some Torvil mining lasers on the cutter, it would make more merits per hour and would make it a bit better than that 75% indicates. So just bear that in mind with those numbers. I've not had time to build a Torvil cutter yet. That's something on my to-do list to get around to at some point, because that would be the dream boat, I'm telling you. Because the cutter is the best laser miner in the game, but it does cost you 488 million compared to the T9 at 186 million. So if you're not ready to commit that amount of money, the T9 is worth considering. But the engineering materials, you do need to engineer it and make sure you blast that off. Otherwise, if it's unengineered, I think you will struggle with it. I would never use an unengineered T9 for laser mining. I think it's not. I don't think it's. If you look at the engineered unit itself, I don't think it is a joke. Some people think the T9 is a joke, but I think it's a decent laser miner. But I'm under no illusions that it's in the top tier, though. But it is, with regards to experience, something in its own kind of class because of the excellent visibility, just the amazing experience in VR. That's the perspective that you want to take the T9 as being a good laser miner. And for people who just like to be out there for 2 hours getting unbothered and just enjoy themselves, like, bear in mind that the cutter is also a long distance one as well, by long time one. So you're talking about an hour and a half, the equivalent in a cutter. Or a bit shorter than that. So it's for people who want to be out there a bit longer, but there's no need to say that they're directly competitors. I think they're just very different beasts, but the cutter would always win based on efficiency rather than experience. Now the other thing to consider is entry-level ships. If you don't have any unlocks, don't have a cutter or a corvette, then it's got to be the Anaconda or the T10. But these are very different beasts. They're more short period laser miners, and they're good for Haz Reses, which I would never go into a Haz Res with a T9. So if you're going to invest materials, I'd save up a little bit more and get something like an Anaconda. Actually, I wouldn't get a T10 really if you're just looking at laser miners, because the Anaconda is so much better than the T10. So that's 289 million for the Anaconda, and that's good for Haz Reses. But you're out there for a much shorter period. You're talking about half the time out there with a Anaconda compared to a T9. But the T9 is still worth considering because it's a completely different beast, as I said. So I think we talked enough about the limitations, and you don't have the limitations of the overheating so much in the when the Anaconda overheats. It's very rare, pretty rarely, and it's right at the end of the cycle. You'll finish one cycle of blasting the rock. It's a completely different experience, and you've got 5 2D laser miners, and you could add Torval lasers to that as well to make that more efficient. But merits per hour wise, the Anaconda and the T10 should be more. But when I'm talking about these merit per hours, just bear in mind we're not talking about transit to and from stations. It's purely being out there in the asteroid field. That's the only way I could compare it, because everyone's going to be different, isn't it? So the actual merits per hour is going to be a little bit less, because you're going to do on the ones where you're going to be travelling more, like such as the Anaconda and the T10 as well, because that has a small amount of cargo capacity too. So I think I've covered just about everything I wanted to on the T9 there. So this is the last one in the series, so check out my other videos on the other laser miners. But next week I'll just do a one-off video of gathering merits through raiding surface settlements, which is quite an interesting way and an enjoyable way to do it if you've invested in the on-foot stuff. Of course, I'm taking it from the perspective of having some kind of engineered kind of suits and more importantly weapons. So you got to bear that in mind for that particular video. But anyway, before I go on and waffle, I should probably end it there, and do drop a like, and got any questions, drop them down below. I'll try my very best to answer them. But these hopefully I've presented the best ships to you, which will help with you. I'm not going to do a T8 build with a merit mining, I don't think, anytime soon, but maybe I will if there's enough interest. So thank you very much for watching, and have a most excellent day. If you're playing Elite Danger A in a T9.